Tracy? Can you hear me? Okay. Mr. Lancaster, Mr. Leckie.
All right, Mr. Ballard, you are live on Zoom and YouTube, and you are recording.
I'm hearing some echo, Mr. Chairman.
Let me turn off the other mic.
Good to go? Good afternoon. Monday, January 4th. Okay. Am I coming through, Mr. Hopkins? Okay. It is January 4th, Monday, a little after 3:30 p.m. The regular meeting of the Transportation Commission of the City of Meridian. I'll call roll. David Ballard. Tom LeClaire. Ryan Lancaster.
Present.
Walter Steed.
Present.
Tracy Hopkins.
Present.
Here.
Jared Smith. Jared Smith. Joseph Leckie.
Present.
Here.
Kavanaugh. John Martin.
Here.
Tony Tisdale.
Here.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. If that was Alyssa Taysom, I'm here.
Lisa. Okay. Justin Price.
Here.
Very good. Two absent. I'll note that Mr. McKinney has resigned, given his election to the Ada County Highway District as a commissioner. Anticipated that an appointment will be made for the February meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it is hard to hear you at times.
Is that any better?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Second item would be the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lewis,
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Next item of business is commission elections. We will take nominations for election of chair and then nominations for election of vice chair. Take nominations for the floor. I will make one disclaimer. I would recuse myself for any further consideration as chair for this year. From the floor, nominations for chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hopkins.
I nominate Mr. Steed as a candidate for chairman.
Okay. Any other nominations, commissioners? Anyone else come to mind? Okay.
I think we all thought that you were going to do it for life, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I've enjoyed a tenure and I've enjoyed a good run. But you haven't gotten rid of me because I get to sit on the back bench now, Mr. Lancaster. All right. so
I
we have-
understand and can appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So we have a nomination of Walter Steed as chair. Is there a second for that? Well, we have one nomination, but we'll keep it official. Is there a second for closing the nominations?
Second.
I have a second. Okay, so as it stands, we have a nomination of Walter Steed to be chair of this Transportation Commission. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Steed, at this time, I'm going to hand you the gavel because you are now the chair of this Transportation Commission.
Thank you very much. You could have warned me, so I wouldn't be sitting here wondering now what. But I will pick it up. Mr. Ballard, I have only been on for 6 or 8 months and really appreciate your help in doing this. And sorry to see you're not going to continue as chair, but we'll pick it up and move on with the day's business. The next item is election of a vice chair. We'd entertain motions for a vice chair for the Meridian Transportation Commission.
Mr. Chair, if I may, while everybody ponders that, Tom Leclerc did just join the meeting as well. We'll have the minutes reflect that change.
This is not 5th grade elections for class president. You can nominate yourself. We need somebody for vice chair, please.
Mr. Chair, I was actually just about to say, absent anyone else any other nominations, I'm happy to take on the job. So I'd like to nominate myself.
Second.
We have a motion and second for Jared to be vice chair of the Transportation Commission. Are there any other nominations? Any further discussion? All in favor of Jared Smith as vice chair of the TC, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, Jared. Thank you for stepping up.
Thank you.
The next item is the approval of minutes of the December 7, 2020 meeting. Open the floor for discussion. Does anyone have any comments on those minutes? Hearing none, I do have one on page 4 of the packet. In the next to last paragraph under the Meridian Police Department update. I'm not sure that that is worded correctly. It's a little misleading. It is correct that the sergeant noted about the opening of Costco, but his comment, I believe, was that it had not caused any traffic problems as they thought it might. And he also separately stated that the road improvements on Black Cat, Ustick, 10 Mile, and 2026 are very helpful to the PD and fire department. I would like to suggest that the minutes be approved, but with a change to that wording to that effect. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. That was you, Tracy, I believe.
Yep.
Second,
I'll second Ballard.
Mr. Ballard, second. We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in
Mr.
favor,
Chair.
say aye.
Mr. Chair, so
Yes.
I understand the motion is to remove the word "and." So Sergeant Frazier noted the opening of Costco, road improvements on Black Cat, Ustick, 10 Mile are helpful to PD.
That would make it work, ma'am. Yeah, just put a comma after Costco, and I think that takes care of it. Is that okay? Precise change okay with the motioner in a second?
Yes.
Okay. With that, I don't think we voted. So all in favor of the minutes as changed, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Next item of business will come under old business, transportation projects update.
So as per usual, I won't read the full packet for the transportation projects update. There'll be a few that I want to highlight. On page 15, the Eagle Road project has begun. There are several items where I put in the notice to proceed dates, as I received a large list from ACHD with some notice to proceed dates. On page 17, the Eagle Road Lake Hazel to Amity design has begun, and we will discuss that further on item 8 on the agenda. The project review subcommittee also reviewed that project today, so they will have some feedback for you with their subcommittee update. On the Chinden West project, you'll note that on page 18 that the Locust Grove Road to Eagle Road portion has 4 lanes open as of December. And one piece that I'll highlight again in the staff communications on page 19, 2nd Street, Idaho to Broadway, discussions are beginning on how to make that portion of the street of 2nd Street here in downtown Meridian a real community gathering place, still being open to cars, but somewhere that people want to go and spend time. So that is in its early conception. So we're working with that, and we'll be going to ACHD Commission with some early concepts and kind of a plan on how we're going to work through that on January 20th. If anybody wants to watch that ACHD Commission meeting on January 20th. And then I will be back in February to have more of an update if the commission would like that. And then I'll just stand for any questions on the project update memo.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I think the organization of this lends itself very well to reading through it and understanding what's going on. And I personally appreciate the keeping it updated so that the things we're seeing out on the streets are reflected in the report. Any questions, comments for Miranda on the project update? Hearing none, we will move ahead to new business. The first item is the Meridian Police Department update. Sergeant.
Good afternoon. Just a couple of quick things. Actually, one main thing we have, Idaho's hands-free law changed from being a warning-only law to a law or offense that you can get a citation for on January 1 of this year. Between July 1st and December 31st, we wrote about 300 warnings for that violation. And that changed on January 1st to being a citable offense. Since that time, we've written 5 tickets, which is about what I expected. When Meridian City Ordinance went into effect, we saw about a 50% decline in the number of people we saw actually on their phones. The warning only stage of the state statute, there was kind of a rebound effect there. But the news media and ITD and ACHD publications about that, OHS publications about that have been good at reminding people to do the right thing and put their phone down. We have noticed that. The only other item we have is my office has seen continually over the last couple months, just general complaints, traffic congestion problems, speeding, stop sign offenses in the area of Black Cat and Chinden, McDermott and Eustick, that whole northwest corner of the city, which is a frequent topic of discussion here. We see that in my office as well. And I know that there's some information in today's packet, I believe, about the intersection of Black Cat and Chinden, and we're following all of those things along with the commission as well. All I have, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for the sergeant? Well, Sergeant, it's good to hear that you can report that y'all are seeing changes in people's usage of those handheld devices. I'll be the first to admit when people started saying that they were causing crashes and whatever, I was a little dubious. That was years ago, and ever since, I've learned to almost just take mine and put it in the car pocket and close it. I hadn't quite had to go that far, but it takes some effort to remember to don't pick that up and don't text your wife, you're almost to the house. Okay, nothing further on that item. We'll move ahead to the next one, which is the ACHD Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Priorities. And I believe that falls to Miranda.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I will just introduce this again. We discussed it last month when we began the conversation regarding roadways and intersections. So just a brief reminder, this is the 5-year work plan that ACHD draws up, and the charge for the Transportation Commission today is to prioritize the projects on the list, or there are some new projects that were added as requested to the list. So whether you want to remove any projects, keep the new ones that were added, and what order that they should be prioritized in. And then the action item would be to make a recommendation to council to pass that prioritization on to ACHD when we submit the list. So I will be here to help and answer questions, pull up any maps that you like, but it is the commission's it's the commission's list. So I'm here to take notes, and you let me know what you want to move up and down.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'll start off by saying that I questioned Miranda on 3 or 4 items that were on the list but did not show as bad LOS items on the LOS map. And she explained to me that that map had been limited to 2021. And if you look further out on the map that ACHD provides for LOS, it was pointing out those areas. And she also gave me a short explanation of why those would be on the list. And I'm quite satisfied that they should be. Does anyone else have comments on the list, please?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, and we've probably covered this. I've been around long enough to, maybe I'm getting old and I forget, but as I look at the list, I'm like, number 2 on the list, future we haven't thought about it. We don't have money for it. We don't blah. And I guess I get that one a little bit. And then number 3, not program. Number 10, not program. Miranda, does that waste? Could we get things built quicker if they had money and had been thinking about it? Does that affect us picking where we want money to go?
So we as a city don't necessarily have a say on where ACHD puts their money. This is our place to have a say for that. So we prioritize our projects, what we find is the highest priority projects, and ACHD gives points to those projects when they're making their final programming of where they're going to put their money. So yes, of course, money is always a factor. Sometimes you'll see projects that cost a little less higher up on the list because cost benefit ratios are part of their formula.
Okay, thank you.
So if I may, putting them on the list helps get them funded, we would like to think.
That is correct. So when Christy Inselman was here last month, she did say that all projects get points. The top 10 get more points. And so we have our top 10 roadways and intersections and our top 10 community programs.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else with questions or comments on the list?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I do have comments on the roads and intersections list.
Okay,
I looked at the projects and compared them to the city's high priority corridors, the city's high priority projects, and also on the level of service map that we were given by ACHD. I was satisfied with the first 16 projects as they're currently ranked. We have gone through this in previous years and did a pretty good job, I think. I would suggest some reordering from 17 to 24, if I could present that really quick.
Yes, please.
I propose that we demote number 17 and number 18 and promote higher 23 and 24. And my reasons for that, number 17, the 10 Mile and Victory, that one is a companion project to number 6. So it's going to be carried by 6 no matter how we rank it, I believe. And on the level of service map, it was a C. On number 18, that was shown as the level of service C also. So that's why on 17 and 18, I'm suggesting that we demote them a little bit. On 23 and 24, those are both on the city's high priority corridor of use stick and lead to the new high school. So that's why I was suggesting that we promote those two. So what I'm suggesting in the end here is that number 19 becomes 17, number 20 become 18, number 23 become 19, number 24 become 20, number 17 become 21, and number 18 become 22. I've got 2 left, don't I? 21 becomes 23 and 22 becomes 24.
Miranda, may I ask a question on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
17 and 18 were on my list, and you gave some reasons why those were where they were. Is that pertinent to Mr. Lancaster's proposal?
Lewis, Mr. Lewis.
It could be, it's
Mr. Lewis,
really
I'm
up to the commission. So what Mr. Steed is referring to is that I noted that the 10 Mile Victory may have some stress when the Linder overpass gets built, just because it is one of the places people might be coming across Victory there to get to Linder. But to move it down just a few won't make a huge impact to that, I don't think. And it's already programmed for design and construction in the next few years. So moving it down the list, I don't think is going to change when it happens very much. If something is already programmed in the next 3 or 4 years, it's likely not going to change.
Okay, and that was 17, I think. What about 18?
I'm sorry, Mr. I'd have to refer to the email on that specific project. I believe that one was in regards to
That had to do with that.
being
That had to do with
widened.
that being in bike interest, and it's only a 1-lane widening, you said.
Yes, that's what it was. So because that's in the North Meridian Bike Ped Plan to install bike facilities, and it's only 1-lane widening, they'll likely do those hand in hand.
Okay, does that change anyone's thinking regarding those two?
Mr. Chairman, no, it does not. This is Commissioner Lancaster, so I like what Commissioner Lewis proposes.
Okay. Before we act on the proposal, are there any other changes that anyone else might want to bring up? Okay, Mr. Lewis, was that a motion?
Yes, it was, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second?
Chairman, I'll
Second.
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Miranda, do you have that list as he presented it? Do you need it read back out again?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have it. Would that, was that motion to adopt the roadways and intersections with just that change, or was it to adopt it with that change and we're still discussing?
Mr. Lewis?
I think it was to adopt the roadways and intersections portions with the corrections I suggested. I don't believe there were any other changes to the roadways and intersections.
And that was my second to that.
Okay. And, okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Now, that leaves, I believe, the community programs list.
Yes,
Is there any
Mr. Chair,
discussion
and
on that?
There are several new items on the community programs list, so there could be discussion to move those up somewhere in the list, or if you'd like me to just continue the numbering, however the commission would like me to handle those.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioners?
I have some comments when we get to that point. I'm not sure if we're there yet.
I'm looking for comments on the community programs list as presented.
I have some comments, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
There are 3 projects and community programs I'd like to propose be promoted to higher position. The first 2 are number 14 and number 15. This is East 3rd Carlton to Fairview in Washington from West 7th to Main Street. These 2 projects were part of the original downtown Meridian neighborhood plan. And number 14 is the second phase to number 3. And number 15 fills in a sidewalk gap in the downtown area. So I'm proposing that we move 14 and 15 up after number 3 in the current list. And the third project that I propose be promoted is a new one. And it doesn't have a number yet. On my printout, it's on the last page of the project list, 5th down from the top. It's Locust Grove, Leafield Drive to Star Lane. In the far right column, it's called S8. I think that's the project number from the North Meridian plan. That one fills in a sidewalk gap, and it seemed to be the most needing of the new ones that I saw. So I would propose that that one move up to somewhere around 15 in the list. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have either additional comments or comments on those 2 proposals?
Mr. Chairman, I'm kind of curious. I'm not sure exactly where this one's at. Number 16, Taconic Drive, Pioneer. So we've had people come in and talk about that school that's over on Hillsdale. Does that fit that? Does anybody know, is familiar enough with that?
So
Comment.
the Hillsdale crossings would be the ones on Stockenham. This Taconic crossing would benefit the same group of children, but it's a cross eagle on the other side. So it's a cross eagle from the school. So currently, if you walk the neighborhood in Eagle across Taconic, there's not a great place to come down from the neighborhood to get to the south side of the street and then cross Eagle.
I would propose moving that up some. I'm just not exactly sure where to put it. Probably in place of rail with trail would be my first inclination. just flop those 16 and 11.
Anyone with other thoughts regarding either that or additional thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I have a lot of comments on the community programs.
I hope somebody can keep up. I'm almost lost, but we'll move ahead. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I can, real quick, I'm sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. Mr. Lewis, did you say to move 14 and 15 up to 2 and 3?
No, to 4 and 5, sorry.
Between the current 3 and 4.
Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then the second one was to add the new, a new one, which is shown as S8. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that was this, that we've got, that's one proposal, two proposals, and the third one had to do with currently number 16, Taconic Drive and Pioneer. And I'm not sure that you had an exact place you wanted to talk about moving that to.
My first inclination, Mr. Chairman, is to just flop that with rails to trail and put it up there a little higher.
11.
Okay, well, let's leave that as the proposal at the moment. Okay, Mr. Lancaster, you said you had a list.
Yes, I have several. I'd like to give my top 15. I suggest that they be in this order, and I've tried to keep up here. So number 6 would become number 1, Stockenham Enhanced Crosswalks. So a little bit of background here. The school subcommittee has had quite a bit of involvement in this one, including meeting with the principal, ACHD, YMCA, and there's some pretty easy changes to be made there. So I propose number 6 go to number 1. Number 2 stays number 2. Number 3 stays number 3. Commissioner Lewis is moving 14 and 15 to 4 and 5. I can go for that. That's fine. Number 4 would become number 6, so Broadway Avenue. So a few of these just get bumped down. So number 4 becomes number 6. Number 5 comes number 7. Number 7 becomes number 8. Number 9 stays number 9. And then I skip to number 37, Amity Eagle to Hillsdale. I propose that move to number 10. It's in the same neighborhood as this YMCA Hillsdale. Let's see, number 11 would be, so I propose combining number 17 and let's see. Okay, so the first new project, Amity Meridian to Locust Grove. So those are the same location. Those should be combined and become number 11. So I would prefer to, I guess, take the new project as opposed to number 17. Being specific about signalized pedestrian crossing, I think, is inappropriate for a planning document such as this.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was with you until that one. Could you do that again, please?
Yeah, so number 17, Amity and Mary Mcpherson Elementary School pedestrian signal should be combined with the first new project on page 26, Amity Meridian to Locust Grove.
Okay.
are in the same area. And I would suggest that the language from the new project be taken instead of number 17, in that saying that it will be a pedestrian signal is too specific for a planning document. And those would become number 11 on my list.
Okay,
Number 20 becomes number 12. Number 24 becomes number 13 on my list. Number 30 becomes number 14 on my list. And on page 27, Lake Hazel Road, Locust Grove to Eagle becomes number 15 on my list. Commissioner Lewis previously mentioned Locust Grove Road, Leafield Drive to Star Lane. After looking at that one a little bit more, I don't see a lot of difference between that one and what was number 39, which is now at the bottom of the list as remove. That's the same section of Locust Grove.
Mr. Chair, if I may on that one.
yes, ma'am.
We discussed removing that because ACHD said it was complete. And with Christy Inselman on the phone, we asked her because it's not actually complete with sidewalks. It's complete with an extruded asphalt curb. And so she said if we want sidewalks, we would need to resubmit it as a new project, and the request would need to specifically say sidewalks because the students aren't currently using it with an extruded curb to access Discovery Elementary School. It is up to the commission completely if you want to add it as a request for sidewalks specifically, or if you're comfortable with the asphalt curb for that project. But I did put it on as news because we discussed it at the last meeting.
Thank you for that clarification.
With that said, what does that do to that item for you, sir?
I see that as probably a project. I see that Locust Grove Road as probably being a road and intersection project as opposed to a community programs project. I guess I'll keep my top 15 that I mentioned. I'll leave that one off of the list for now. I would like to add that there are several projects that I think should be removed from the list. So I think project number 13 should be removed from the list. As noted, Eagle Road is an ITD facility. It does us no good to prioritize it on the ACHD list. I propose that we scratch number 11, Meridian Rail with Trail. This has been on the list for several years, and as noted there, ACHD can't do anything with it until the city takes some action, which hasn't happened. Number 8, I think, should be removed from the list. And this, there's a few of these in that they are mostly school related. And while that's important, West Ada School District also has an opportunity to give their prioritized list. And so I am more inclined to give, I guess, not school related projects on this list and let West Ada propose their own. So in that vein, I also recommend scratching number 19. From the note there, it's clear that ACHD does not plan to do anything there, so we might as well take it off. Same with number 22, number 26, number 28 can be removed, and that it's an IT facility, not ACHD. Number 31, I would prefer to see construction projects rather than a study. Number 32, it's at a school and also ACHD evaluated and says they're not going to do anything. Same with 33 and 34. 36. So all of these are scratched. 38. It's scoped as no go, so no sense keeping it on the list.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Is the intent of this list only for ACHD, or can it be for other types of funding as well? I'm scratching all these projects just because ACHD isn't actually going to fund them. Is that something that we should be looking at, or is this really supposed to be the prioritized list of projects that the city would like to fund through whatever source? I know it's an ACHD list, but is the true intent of this the city's priorities?
I think that's a good question, and I'll defer to someone that knows the answer.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Caleb.
this is Caleb. So it can be whatever the commission wants. Kind of to Ms. Tisdale's question, we do put it on the website as the city's prioritization list, although historically we've only used it to share with ACHD. So the direction that Mr. Lancaster is going with this, I don't necessarily disagree with, because we technically only share it with ACHD as our request lists. But again, we do advertise it for those that may go to the website as the city's priority projects, irregardless of who may be the sponsor agency or ITD, ACHD, Compass, or other funding source for the project. So I'll kind of put that back on the commission. We could change the title of this and just say ACHD priority projects and send that to ACHD, or this could be a combined priority list and use it as for those.
A question, Caleb, would cleaning up the list be beneficial? Such as deleting the items that are being listed as not being ACHD type projects? Would that make it a more readable and useful list that might get some things done?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, you cut out there a little bit on my end. If that was directed at me, I apologize. I missed a good portion of that.
My question, Caleb, was would reducing the number of items on the list in the manner that Mr. Lancaster has been proposing, and following up on Ms. Teasdale's question, would that be of benefit to reduce the list, to cut it down to more of an ACHD list that lists things that they can actually someday fund and do? Or
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for repeating the question again. Sorry, I missed it the first time. I mean, sort of another way to maybe tackle this, to have, so we don't have multiple lists of priority projects out there, is to gray them out or some otherwise note them on the spreadsheet that these are for ACHD's purposes, and then maybe gray them out or color them something different if there's another, potential funding source or sponsor for that project, but it's still a high priority project for the city. So then we're not wasting points on a railway trail, say, that ACHD really isn't doing anything with, but it is still, at least for some of the leadership at the city, still a priority project to keep moving forward. So maybe that's how we, can do some coloring of the spreadsheet and the priorities to really differentiate those things. Because yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, a sidewalk project, if it's a priority, it's a priority, regardless of if it's in ITD's right of way or the city acquires an easement or whatever. If there's a need for that, it should be documented somewhere, would be my opinion.
Mr. Lancaster, do those comments have any impact on what you've been proposing?
Mr. Chairman, they do not, in that we are specifically working on the ACHD 5-year project list. But in line with what we were talking about, I don't know, perhaps we do have different lists, just in that some of these really are wish lists. They're, some of them aren't going to happen tomorrow, right? The Rails with Trails is one of them. You read through the comments on some of these, they're not projects, they're not shovel-ready projects per se. These are longer horizon, so perhaps those go on a wish list as opposed to this list.
Move them to the bottom of
Mr.
it.
Chair, if I may.
Was that Miranda?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am, please.
So from my understanding with Christy Inselman, we're not losing any points by leaving these on the list. Projects below, around the 20 mark are still getting points. They're all getting points. It's just the top, I believe it's 20, maybe top 15, get a higher number of points depending on where they fall. So I think as long as these projects are towards the bottom of the list, even if we're seeing them as wish list items, other projects aren't losing points because they're on the list. So that's just my 2 cents. If you want to clean up the list, that's completely up to Transportation Commission.
Mr. Lancaster, would dropping your list of removes, and I'm not certain whether you got through with your list of removes or not, would dropping them down to the bottom of the list as opposed to removing them work for you?
Well, I suppose it's the same thing. I do think that many of them should be taken off the list altogether, especially these that have been evaluated by ACHD already, and they found no merit in the project. They just need to come off the list.
Did you get through your list of removes? I got 38 was the last one I had.
Yeah, I could keep going, but
There are more?
I have several. Yeah, so 38, 40, 41, 42, 43.
Oh, those are all no-goes.
Yeah, and then on page 27, McDermott Road, Ustick to McMillan Road. Is that even in Meridian? I don't know the current city limits on the west side of the city. So if it's not, I'd propose to remove that. And then Ustick Road and Venable Lane, this is the second to last new project. I would only be in favor of that if the pedestrian hybrid beacon at 3rd Street, I believe there's one at 3rd Street that went in with the Ustick widening, only if that is removed. Because that would place 2 within a quarter mile, which I would not support. So.
Okay, is that, not to cut you off, but is that it?
I can stop there.
Okay, good answer. I have a question for Miranda.
Chair.
What is our time frame on this list?
We need to have a prioritization finalized to send to council. Council has to send theirs at the end of February to ACHD. So this would be, this is the opportunity for the Transportation Commission to make these changes and finalize and make an advisement to council who actually finalizes the list before it goes to ACHD.
Okay, with that being said, Mr. Lancaster, let me ask you this. What if you incorporated the earlier Mr. Lewis's changes into your new numbering list? Is that correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
What if, Mr. Lancaster, if we were to consider approving the list with your new numbering that includes his changes and leave the removes in abeyance, possibly for a subcommittee project to sit down and look at them and see if a subcommittee can come to consensus about either removing or a second list or a bottom of the list or a what they wish to do? How would that strike you?
I guess that's okay.
Since we're under the gun to have a list.
Yeah, well, if they're still on the list next year, I'm gonna propose to remove them again, so.
I'm proposing an interim step before next year to look at your concerns. I don't want to push them off, forget them, ignore them, but I'm not sure that this meeting where we're obligated to report something forward to council is the time to discuss the removes. I am okay with seeing what the commissioners wish to do with the proposed new ordering.
Mr. Chairman, if at the end of the day, we ended up with, what I proposed is the top 15 or something close to it, then that would suffice me.
Okay, commissioners, comments, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
there were the project swap that Commissioner Hopkins had also. I'd like to toss that into the mix.
You're gonna have to refresh my memory. It's probably here in my scratching, but I don't have names by it.
Commissioner Hopkins suggested we swap 11 and 16. Is that right, Tracy?
That is correct.
And Mr. Lancaster, did you incorporate that in your new listing?
It was not in the top 15.
Yeah, I did not have it in my top 15.
How would you feel about swapping 11 and 16? I guess the current 11 and 16.
So 11, it was one of the ones that I had scratched from my list. So I would not put 11 in my top 15.
That would move, switching 11 and 16 would put it at 16.
Well, no, it wouldn't, because the current 11 wasn't in my top 15.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lancaster, where did you have project 1 on your list?
So it would
The
be
Locust
outside
Grove.
15. I don't know why that's number 1.
Okay. So just
I-
demoting it in general, you don't have a specific
Yep.
place. Okay.
Yep. If Tracy, if we want to put it at number 11, bump it into number 11 on between 10 and 11 on my list, that would be fine.
I just remember those people really having a hard time over there. And I think of the safety, there's a lot of kids moving through that area is the only concern I have. I don't have kids anymore. I'm not over there looking at it. They just came up in front of us and told us that was a problem over there.
The kind of thing we ought to be listening for. Other comments by the commissioners?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Smith.
I'm not necessarily opposed to eliminating number 8 or to demoting it at the very least. I don't have the information available, but I do know that is an area where there really isn't much. There isn't much crosswalk availability at the elementary school. So I know that might be. I mean, that's beyond, I guess, Mr. Lancaster's concern of that being more of an ACHD kind, or not ACHD. Sorry, West Ada school district concern. I still think there might be some merit to including it, just on safety grounds for students in the area. So I'd maybe like to hear if anyone has any insight onto that, onto the need for that. If there is a need, I'd like to see that. I mean, it's at number 8, so I assume there is some voice need, but I'd like to hear a little bit about that to maybe oppose demoting that.
Anyone have any additional knowledge on current number, the listed number 8?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I guess a couple more thoughts about what's currently number 8 and currently number 16. Just looking at those on Google Earth, there's not much of a project there as I read it. So here at Sienna Elementary, it would be across Capulet to the micro path that goes into the back of the school. That's fine. It doesn't seem to be as significant, or I don't know. Some of these, I wonder why they're on this list. Because, from past experience with Mr. Martin and ACHD, there's times that they'll go and install a crosswalk and pedestrian crossing signs without them being on this list. And so, I'm not sure that those 2 locations, I guess, merit making this list to me. Perhaps there's things that we can request. I don't know if they should be on this list or not. I'm saying perhaps they can be done outside of this list also. But that's part of my reasoning, Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I just looking at, again, Google Earth, and kind of also that's near my house. They're really, I mean, the only other crosswalk on the other side is kind of completely on the other side of the entrance. So I think, maybe that is a discussion to have about whether it can be accomplished without it being on the list or things like that. It is something that I would like to see done. It's just, I guess it's a question of the methods by which we want to promote it.
You do not want it dropped. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so I think absent a way to, maybe, and this might be something for Mr. Martin to talk about, but absent another way to advocate for that or to maybe discuss that outside of the list, if there is that opportunity, I'd be open to dropping it. But absent that, I'd like to maybe keep it on, somewhere in the top 15.
Well, the commissioner comments.
Ballard, I have a question for Mr. Lancaster.
Ballard.
Mr. Lancaster proposed on number 8, the pedestrian crossing, defer to Ada County School District to list it as a priority. Number 34. Who would speak on behalf of that school?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Commissioner Ballard. So that's a fantastic question. And I know that school has been, we've discussed that school as a commission, where it's a private school, as I recall, that school has been evaluated. Perhaps Mr. Martin remembers, but as I recall, that has been evaluated, and because of the nature of the school, it being a private school, many students come from elsewhere, not necessarily walking from the community. And so, I I know we've talked about that one before, and there was not a need, as I recall.
Mr. Chairman,
As far as who would advocate for them, I guess the school needs to advocate for themselves, but I do remember talking about that school specifically.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
we did talk about that last year, and I recall we asked the question, well, what was in the traffic impact study for that school? And the traffic impact study said that, if I recall correctly, it said, yeah, you're going to need an enhanced crossing there. And I believe as a condition of approval, and Sean can correct me if I'm misremembering, but I think that as a condition of approval, that the school was going to install that once their enrollment warranted the enhancement, if I remember that right.
I remember that too.
Caleb, can we move 34 over into your shop to find out what the condition was and whether or not it's been met?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we can do that. I agree with Commissioner Hopkins and Commissioner Lewis. I do remember, and Mr. Martin is there as well, that being a condition of ACHD basically initially when they did their TIS before the school was opening. And basically the school not, asking for some help to financially put that crossing in, understanding that they're the ones that are, the warrant for that crossing is based on their existence. So I can look into that some more. Again, just a little bit more of the history on that one. We did have the principal address the commission a couple of years ago with that request, and that was essentially the outcome from ACHD was ACHD thought, well, you're the generator of this need, therefore you should mitigate those impacts. So I can ground truth that a little bit more, but that is what the situation is out there.
Mr. Ballard, can we take your question regarding 34 and move it over to Caleb to research and report back and leave 34 as it is for the time being?
Yes, I would not want to lose the opportunity to see the kids cross the street there.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Other questions, comments on the list? that we
Mr.
discussed?
Chairman, as I research Pioneer Trail Avenue, and my recollection's a lot better now, they're building, Hunter Homes is building this whole area out. So when that was a priority, I'm gonna guess that street was almost, it bends very little. Police officers pull cards over all the time on it for speeding, but that's probably gonna correct itself because there is some improvements to slow cars down through there. Now they've added. And so maybe moving that up too high is not warranted. There's probably putting sidewalks on both sides of Taconic now going up where they weren't in the beginning because they're improving that street all the time. Maybe that's back on Hunter Homes to maybe make that correction. And maybe that might already be in the works because I know Hunter and Brighton are working on the intersection we're going to talk about here later.
So that was number 16?
Yeah, so I'd probably keep it down in the 16-ish range.
Okay. All right, that takes care of 16. Any other comments by any commissioner or staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Tom Leclerc.
Well, I think Mr. Lancaster, his best point are these ones that ACHD has said are scoped as no-goes. So I would agree with dropping those, but only those. I think the rest could just be moved to the bottom of the list. And then we can evaluate them as we go. But the thing about this is that they're on the list, even if it's ITD we're trying to talk to. I think it's important that stay there. I mean, it tells the mayor's office, this is a project we need to work on. And they can, it's not, who knows if it's a priority to the mayor or not, you can make that decision, but it tells us, it's instructive to the other departments in the city where we want to be on these other projects. And so the ones that aren't ACHD, it doesn't matter where they are on the list. As Miranda said, the only trouble is if they get too high, they can have an effect of taking points away from ACHD projects that need points. And so it's kind of how we build this list is by far the most important agency that sees it is ACHD. So yeah, the top 15 to 20 projects should probably all be ACHD projects. And so that's a good direction generally. And since these ones, ACHD has said no go, we don't have anyone else to ask. So I don't know why they'd stay on our list. So that's some comments about those discussions. All I got.
Other commissioner comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
if I may ask Mr. Lancaster, did you say number 22 was one of the ones you wanted to drop from the list?
It's on, I show he did.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Miranda, it is. And the reason for that would be, it would be the same as road and intersection project number 2. So if road and intersection project number 2 is built, then number 22 on the community programs would also happen.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, in fear of asking for further comments, I will remind everyone we've had a lengthy discussion. Anybody that can read their notes is probably a step ahead of me, but we need to do something with this list. It needs to go to the council in some form or fashion. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Chair.
if I may share my screen, I've been doing my best to follow and that might help some.
Perfect.
We can use help.
Really good.
So I've done my best to incorporate everybody's ups and downs. So if the number doesn't match the exact number that you said, I apologize. I was trying to get everybody's in, working on getting some X's in on the ones that we've discussed dropping down on the list. So really to kind of solidify the top 20, I have here the top 18 projects. And then we would need to decide what number 19 and 20 are. And then the rest I can demote the ones that were suggested and fill the rest in with the same order that they're left in from previous years, if that makes sense. So I'll stop scrolling. So here's the top 18.
Glancing at your list and at a couple of 3 of my scratchings, it looks like you've picked up at least those 2 for sure. Mr. Lancaster, since you were the primary, let's reorder the list, Commissioner. What does Miranda's spreadsheet look like to you?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it looks fine. I do see number 11 is, and it's probably because you've got it down on the new projects, which was the Amity, Meridian to Locust Grove. That's the only omission that
I just missed writing 11 and started
Yeah.
at 12. I apologize.
but otherwise I see.
So we need 18, 19, and 20, and then I can fill in the rest based on what was demoted.
Okay, before we add 18, 19, 20, and we still don't have a motion, and I'm not pushing for one at the moment. Does anyone have any comments regarding 1 through 17 as on the screen at the moment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I do in that, okay, so now Now what's number 11? As I recall, Commissioner Hopkins said to go ahead and keep at about 16.
Correct.
Sorry, Miranda. So
You're good.
1 through 10 as you have written, then 16, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17. No, that one stays 7. The Lake Hazel, Locust Grove to Eagle would stay 7. Yeah. That's my only catch, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else commenting for comments on the presented 1 through 17? With the new order being the left column. Okay, we need a 18, 19, and 20, gentlemen. Anyone?
I'm gonna just continue filling in these demote X's while you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
While we're waiting on an 18, 19, 20, feel free to demote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think we can just take the next 3 projects and call them 18, 19, and 20. And unless there's someone that objects to that.
Mr. Chairman, I like that idea. I think we've had people come in and talk to us about McMillan Road, Locust Grove, Red Horse Way also.
So then would it be 18 is Locust Grove Overland,
Yes.
19, okay.
Oh, 19, yeah. Is that what you gentlemen were suggesting? Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, just want to clarify the X's, Miranda. Those are just generically drop, right? Not delete from the list?
Not delete, just drop them down. The ones that say drop duplicate, I will delete those.
Got
from
it.
the list.
Okay, thank you.
The X's will go to the bottom of the numbered, the remaining numbered list.
That's correct.
Perfect.
And so I understand are all the new projects that were added. So those will be above the demoted projects. Is that correct? Is everybody comfortable with the new projects?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Miranda, I think that's all okay. The only one that I had comment on was that last one, the Ustick Road at Venable Lane. Just in that, if that project is done, then I think there should be modifications at, what is that, West 3rd Street, I think. But it's at the bottom of the list anyway, so it's kind of okay, so.
And that one is on the ACHD North. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
So you would leave, Mr. Lancaster, you'd leave Ustick Road and Venerable Lane as a new project without an X?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Again, my comment is if that project is built, then, you know, the pedestrian hybrid beacon that's already at Ustick and 3rd West should probably be removed. Need one or the other, not both.
Okay, we have a new list, a new order rather, of the list. We still need a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we adopt the community programs ranking as Miranda is typing.
I would second that.
Okay, that's as typed with the X's being moved to the bottom.
Yes, sir.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I would support maybe a subcommittee to look at those a little. It's hard to make that kind of decision. I mean, I just got off a vacation. I'm looking at this and without Google Earth or driving around, it's hard to prioritize. Be nice if we had some insight.
Okay, we will work on getting that done. I think it's a good idea in light of time, not today. We have a motion and a second on a new ordering of the community programs list. Any other discussion? Miranda, are you good?
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
All in favor of the list is on the screen, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Miranda, you have a list to forward to the council. And I jumped to the conclusion that that motion included forwarding to council. Is that correct, motioner and chair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Whew.
Yay.
Item number 7, project review subcommittee update. And until I get scrolled up, it's going to be Mr. Ballard.
Thank you, Chair. Subcommittee met for the first time today, and we looked at scope of work, Eagle Road, Lake Hazel Road, Amity Road. I'm here to make an interim status report, and I'll fill that in a minute. So you have an initial scope of work, initial design. Our recommendation is that it be advanced to the city planning with the subcommittee to review after initial comments received. This is in the early stages. We anticipate the next meeting of the subcommittee probably in April, and what that's based upon is as it progresses through city planning at April, there may be a 30% design completion, if you will. As we discussed this, we considered issues that this Transportation Commission has previously discussed after the fact, if you will, of subdivision. So looking forward, we briefly noted the speed limit issue addressed in the scope of work, the bike lane proposal, pedestrian crossing, and roundabouts. So we believe that this initial scope of work appears to be comprehensive, and we ask that it be advanced to city planning, and then we'll bring it back to the committee for further analysis and work on a final report going forward.
Okay, sir, thank you. A question for appropriate staff. What is the process for us, for the Transportation Commission, to move something forward to the P&Z? I thought it was an easy. I thought it was an easy question.
So this particular project wouldn't be moving it forward to P and Z, we'd be moving it forward to City Council. So just looking for comments or recommendations on what we want City Council to send comments to ACHD. So this commission would make comments to City Council, and then City Council would gather those comments, add anything they have or recommendations, and send those to ACHD. Does that
So
answer the question?
Well, it somewhat. Are you saying that this commission cannot forward something to P&Z?
They could, but this particular project, the Eagle Road, Lake Hazel to Amity, isn't being reviewed by P&Z. It's an ACHD project.
Mr. Ballard?
Mr. Steed, with those comments, what we were talking about is here's an initial plan, initial scope of work. going to be working its way through the review process with the city planner. And as that progresses, as I understand it, as that process progresses and gathering initial comments, then this project could come back to the subcommittee that I chair to look at developments. So what I'm talking about is a work in progress, as I understand it. This is not ready at this point to go to P and Z, if I understand that right. It's not ready to go to city council yet. We're on the initial end, or we're on the initial point of reviewing this process. And so there's going to be information gathering, and it will work towards finalization of design along that pathway as those design steps are finalized. That can come back to our committee for further analysis or comment.
Mr. Chairman, with
To answer
that, I
your
have,
question, I do not know at what point we could refer out to P and Z. We're an advisory committee to city council.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. I want to apologize for Commissioner Ballard. I ran into technical difficulties and sat here from 2 o'clock on trying to get hooked up to that particular meeting and didn't get it done till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Ballard. I'm really familiar with this project. I know that there's going to be huge pushback. They didn't have the luxury of learning about roundabouts like we did last meeting. And so those people have lived with the Amity roundabout without proper planning to facilitate children going through that area. And they'll look at this, and there will be lots of people that don't like that particular roundabout. I feel differently now a little bit because I got to see the kind of it in action last month, excuse me. But public comment is going to be huge on that. What I do think is good, as I read through the scope of work in very particular detail, is the amount of effort that ACHD is going to look, or ITD and probably ACHD is going to look at that and take all of that into consideration. When we had the walkabout, that workshop that Caleb had us sign up for, and it was in the middle of the day, and we came out to that particular area. We looked at roundabout as opposed to signals, and they did not like the roundabout. Their opinion is it was dangerous for children because there's a lot of children in this side that's got to cross Eagle to get to Hillsdale. I'll bet you Miranda can comment about that because they forced the school to bus people out of this subdivision over there because the facility was not adequate to protect children walking that way.
Okay,
Randy?
we have an item that Mr. Ballard says isn't ready for blue ink on it yet, but it needs to be worked on some more by someone somewhere, and sending it to P and Z, according to Miranda, I believe, is not the step to take. And I can understand why it certainly isn't ready to go to city council. So the question becomes, Mr. Ballard, what do we do with this?
Well, Mr. Steed, let me go back.
Please.
This is an initial plan. It's going through design. It's going through review. We looked at it, and our initial questions seems to be comprehensive. And just as Mr. Hopkins pointed out, as this scope of work, as this design plan progresses, this is progressing. It's not ready, as I understand it. As it's progressing, we will have an opportunity to comment further, and I think Mr. Hopkins' questions are well taken, that when it comes back and we have additional information, so at this point, we're anticipating by April, we'll have additional information to discuss in the subcommittee and either make an interim report at that time or a final report as to next steps.
Okay, so Miranda, if I may, can you, I'm sure, keep an eye on this and at the appropriate time, advise the chairman of the subcommittee that it's ready enough for them to look at it again? I hate to see them just say we'll meet again in April because it could move possibly quicker or it may not be ready by then. So can staff keep their finger on the pulse of this and stay in touch with Mr. Ballard as chair of the subcommittee and get it back before them?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I've got the communication, if I understand it, is that the scope is comprehensive. The TC anticipates by April or May being able to make a report. And in the meantime, staff will monitor the progress and update the TC as needed. Transportation Commission as needed. Apologize for acronyms.
Mr. Steed, if I may,
Yes, sir.
with the information we had before us today, we're not in a position to make a further comment until we get additional information. I don't mean to be chicken or egg or going around in a circle, but if there is information that came to light tomorrow, next week, or before February, we would call another meeting to review the new information. All I was saying is, this is a plan that's starting down the pathway. I'm not saying not to make changes, because there will be changes made based upon comments. So it's the request that we're making to Ms. Carson is, we get additional information, we'll come back, and whether that's February, March, or April, we'll sit down again.
Okay, any other commissioners with a comment on this? I don't believe a motion is called for. I believe that we have marked out a path for this subcommittee and that on that particular topic. Miranda, are we good?
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Well, Mr.
Okay, thank you,
Steed,
ma'am.
Mr.
Miss-
Steed, the point there is, we can make a report when it's noticed on an agenda. We're not in a position to make a report. I was just given a status,
Okay.
if you will, what we did to meet, or what we did in meeting today.
Okay, I may be the one to mess this up, but when I heard refer to P and Z, I jumped the gun possibly. Okay, moving on to item 8 on the agenda, Eagle Road, Lake Hazel to Amity scope of work discussion. Is anything further on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I was not in your subcommittee meeting earlier today, but I did have a couple of comments on the scope of work. I'm not sure if that's appropriate to mention now, or I can email them to you later, whichever is best.
If it's not going to take a lot of time, I'd suggest you go ahead and make them now.
It won't take long. I just had 2 comments on the scope of work that was shown to us.
Okay, please.
The first one is related to I don't want to say controversy, but I'll say controversy on the project to the north, the Victory to Amity project. There was a considerable back and forth on the design of the side path, the multi-use path, as those paths come into intersections and how those are treated, whether the crossings are at the intersection or whether they're set back a certain distance. And that went back and forth quite a long time. I think, and that discussion is not in the scope of work. I think it would be a good suggestion that it be looked at a little closer. The second thing I wanted to comment on, go ahead.
I can't hear.
Asking Mr. Lewis to make a notation on the page so I can pick it up in my discussion.
So I did not see anything in the scope of work that talked about the side path intersection design. So that should be something added somewhere. I'm not sure where the best place would be.
Side path design, you say?
Yeah, the intersection design with the street intersections.
Very good.
And the second comment I had was on task 4.4, where the consultant is going to analyze traffic signal versus roundabout. I had kind of a technical comment on the software being used in the third paragraph. I don't believe that the highway capacity manual methodology is the best methodology to use in that analysis. I would have alternate recommendations on that. Specifically, Sidra, Rodel, or VSIM are better software packages, in my opinion, to use for that analysis. And that's the extent of my comments to the scope.
Mr. Ballard, is that helpful?
Yes, I wanted to ask Mr. Lewis, you say comment for what page?
It's on page 15 of the scope or 72 of the packet, task 4.4, third paragraph.
Okay, so software.
Yeah, where it talks about highway capacity manual HCM methodology right there. That's my concern.
You would look at different software.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the design intersection where the gentleman, I don't remember his name, came out and pointed out where the pedestrians are crossing behind the cars. Is that Mr. Lewis? That's the one you're talking about?
Yes, that was one of the issues. I know in the city council meeting that I was watching, there was considerable back and forth between ACHD and the city council about those side path intersection designs. I think it's an important issue for council.
Yeah.
And for us also. I tend to be of the same mind as Councilor Burnt on his opinion on the side path design.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis, I read a document in one of our packets where they loved it. I think it was last month, where somebody in ACHD loved that design and said he wished more intersections were designed like that. Did you read that?
I read that and I still disagree with it.
That makes two of us, so I just wanted to point that out because I thought it sounded like it was a done deal.
I hope not.
They're building it. They're building it. So.
Okay, anything further on the scope of work discussion? All right, moving ahead, the next item is the Ordinance and Development Subcommittee update. And I am of a mind that will include item 10, the ATV, UTV ordinance draft. Tom LeClaire, Chairman of the Ordinance and Development Subcommittee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subcommittee met today and reviewed the draft that I think you have in your packets for the ATV ordinance. The committee's recommendation is that we proceed with this ordinance and that the Transportation Commission schedule a public hearing at either February or March meeting to receive comments on the draft that we have. There were some suggestions and discussion about possible amendments. The committee chose to just take the ordinance as we see it presented in the packet. And I can go over those suggestions with the full commission if you like, but that's the short version of my report.
Okay, so the subcommittee is recommending to the full commission, that the commission move the ordinance as presented in the packet forward to a future meeting and schedule an announced public hearing on the ordinance.
Yes.
And there were, because I was part of that subcommittee, there were a couple of items that were discussed in the subcommittee about possibly, I think, adding to the ordinance, and discussion with the police department representative and the city attorney representative. The subcommittee decided not to make an addition. I don't know, unless somebody wants to ask what were they, we need to get into those. I think they will possibly come back up in further discussions of this before it is ready to go to council, if it goes. So rather than get off into that, I think I'll leave it at that. Any comments from other commissioners about this item?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hopkins, I saw you first.
I just have a point of clarification. I believe we've had discussions, and Mr. Lancaster and Mr. Lewis probably remember this, about spur wing added into that exclusion like Lakeview is currently added in. Did you get any comments on that?
We did not. Does anyone in the staff have any comment on spur wing?
Mr. President, this is Emily Kane.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that not all of Spurwing is within the city of Meridian. So we might need to coordinate with possibly the county and the sheriff's office to work through some of those kind of cross-jurisdictional issues if we were to make that change.
Mr. Hopkins, the change would be to add spur wing as an excluded?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I just know it came up.
Okay.
And I believe we added spur wing, parts of spur wing like Lakeview, because they said, hey, this isn't right. You're doing this for Lakeview. We should get that same exclusion because of the nature of that community.
The subcommittee did not discuss spur wing in any fashion.
Chairman.
Anyone else with comments about the ordinance as in the packet or regarding spur wing as a possible additional street to be considered as an excluded location?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I do recall the discussion Commissioner Hopkins is talking about several years ago. I don't recall that we ever made a decision one way or the other about whether to modify the current ordinance to add them into it. But they're not in the ordinance now, so it didn't happen. I'm not exactly sure why it didn't happen. Maybe it was the jurisdictional issues that Ms. Kane is talking about.
Caleb, were you, I'm presuming you were around then. Do you have any memory?
Mr. Chair, members of the
Yes.
committee, I don't recall. I'm trying to search my memory banks and I don't recall that, so I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Just on the procedure here. So we haven't ever as a commission had a public hearing before that I'm aware of. I thought, just as far as procedure goes, I thought that if we have a recommendation, it goes to a city council directly and that they would hold hearings on that. Is that not correct?
That is, in my opinion, partially correct. The city council, when and if this ever gets to them to consider as a change of a city ordinance, will be required to hold a public hearing. It was said by someone in the subcommittee today that they felt that the council would like their commissions to do as much of the groundwork as possible on such things before it is sent up to them. My understanding, and I'm going to ask Emily King to step in here in a minute, but my understanding was that Transportation Commission is not required to hold a public hearing, but in this case probably should, because we have been told there are people in the ATV community that may very well want to speak to it. Ms. Kane or Miranda, either one?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. It's within the discretion of the chair whether or not to take public testimony. This agenda item was obviously not noticed as a public hearing, and it doesn't need to be in order to take public testimony. But a greater effort to notice the meeting and put the word out regarding the opportunity to provide public testimony is a feature of a public hearing that obviously this just agenda notice was provided for this item. So given the interest in this, it is my recommendation that the commission solicit public testimony and get some input on the draft before forwarding it to City Council.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lewis, does that answer your question? Okay, good. With that being said, I don't know this, but I wonder if we don't have someone that is attending our meeting today anticipating this item. Looking at the time, I'm reluctant to open it up to do that at this time, knowing that the proposal from the subcommittee is to move this to a Transportation Commission public hearing at a upcoming meeting. So with all of that said, Chair would entertain a motion regarding this item.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Leclerc.
I move that the commission schedule a public hearing for the draft ordinance that is on our agenda today for the ATV UTV governance for the city.
And do you include a time at which you would propose that to happen?
Let's say the February 1st meeting of the Transportation Commission.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Motion and second. Discussion from the commissioners, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
perhaps this can happen later, but I do have a couple suggestions for the ordinance. Well, they're not related directly to the motion though, so I don't know if this is the right time to ask or not.
Sure, we'll let you ask them. Yeah, go ahead and we'll
All right. Well,
we'll see what it does.
So first, kind of a dumb question. So does this, I'm taking it that this ordinance will completely replace Chapter 5 of, I don't know what you call it, Title 7 as currently written. Is that correct?
Yes, this particular section of Title 7.
Okay.
And if you've noticed, it is much more than a strike and score. It was not just add UTV here, there, and yonder. It's Ms. Kane found as she got into it that it could use some work anyway.
Yeah. My suggestion, Mr. Chairman. So first, and I guess I'm looking at 7-5-3 paragraph B, and I see that the 15 miles per hour is carried over from the previous ordinance. I don't know, how that number was arrived at. It seems kind of arbitrary. And then to that end, it seems like paragraph D is unnecessary if you have paragraph B. How do you measure careless or heedless manner or without due caution. You know, those sound nice, but I don't know how an officer would measure those. So those are my two suggestions, I guess, going forward, whether now is the time or later.
Okay, well, I would ask Ms. Kane to speak to B conflicting with D or vice versa, and then ask Sergeant Frazier regarding the ability to apply. Ms. Kane?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lancaster, as far as the speed limit, that is a carryover from the existing code, and I don't know if that's the speed limit. I guess I don't know how that became the speed limit for golf courses. However, I think that catch-all provision in D, it might encompass speeding, but of course there are many different ways to operate those vehicles unsafely. And so this is just for rather than list every possible way to operate those unsafely and make that illegal, this just leaves it in the officer's discretion. It's somewhat similar to an inattentive driving or just a situation that it was carelessness or failure to use due care that really caused a problem, or it's kind of a joyride kind of situation. So that might involve speed or it might not. So while they're similar, I think they do different things.
Ms. Kane, a question from myself. Talking about B and 15 miles per hour, you used the term golf courses. Did you mean golf carts or golf courses?
Mr. Chair, I guess I was trying to think what maybe a reasonable speed is for a golf cart on a private course. So I don't know if that is a carryover to the roadway or not.
Well, the lead sentence before 753A under 753 seems to restrict A through F to public streets, sidewalks, pathways, or alleys.
Yes.
Which would seem to preclude golf courses?
Mr. Chair, yes, this does not govern the operation of golf carts on golf courses. I guess I was surmising that this speed limit is how fast golf carts can safely go.
Okay. Sergeant Frazier, are you still with us, sir?
You hear me, Mr. Chair? Yes, I'm still here.
Yes, sir. Did you hear Mr. Lancaster's questions about 753B and D, and do you have any comment?
As Ms. Kane said, the references to careless or inattentive or heedless behavior, those all have judicial precedence in terms of exactly what they mean, and it boils down to whether or not a person of reasonable caution would tend to believe that the operator was acting in that manner at the time. There's room for officer discretion in many areas of the law, including this, but it is a fairly stringent test at the end of the day, and ultimately it would boil down to also what a judge reviewing the case thought. I can also speak to the 15 mile an hour number as it pertains to golf carts. That is an accepted norm in the manufacturing community of the top speed of a golf cart, and you'll see that speed referenced in a lot of codes that are dealing with golf carts.
And furthermore, you representing the MPD find this language to be applicable to your needs?
It is, yes.
Mr. Lancaster?
That answers my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second before us. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. The next item on the agenda for today is staff communications.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask real quick, who seconded the motion that Mr. Leclerc made?
That would be me.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smith. Okay, Miranda, I believe you're up with the staff communications item. Again, I want to compliment staff on reordering these and finding a way to delineate between topics. It's much easier to read now. Any comments regarding staff communications?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I mentioned briefly in the projects update, and I'll go into a little bit more detail, the 2nd Street Broadway to Idaho. Just looking, we met with a small group of people just to look at some concepts, not even actual design concepts, really just what attributes do we want a community gathering place in Meridian to have? What attributes we want a street that we're trying to draw people into to have. So very high level, very beginning steps of looking at that concept. So we will be going to ACHD Commission, as I said, on January 20th to look at that. One thing to note is we're not proposing that we vacate 2nd Street. We're not proposing taking that on or reducing it as a reducing vehicular travel on that. We're thinking possibly one-way curbless block. Just wanting to make sure that the ACHD Commission doesn't have any huge concerns with this before we go further down the road looking at design and the pieces that we need to put into place for that. So what I would ask from the Transportation Commission, if there are any thoughts or concerns that the commission has about 2nd Street being one way, whether it being curbless, and then the idea would also be that occasionally we might shut that down and use it, for example, as the Main Street Market that we hold here, moving that over to 2nd Street or something of that nature. So using it as a market type street, occasionally having it close to traffic. So just wanted to let the Transportation Commission know that that was coming, and that that's something that's in its conception, and see if there were any thoughts, concerns so far on that. I know there's not a lot of information yet, but just trying to head off any major issues before we get too far down the road.
And you're not looking for comments at this moment?
If there are comments, I'm happy to take them.
But you will be, this will be coming before us as a full agenda item in the near future.
Yes, so I will be coming forward with more information, maps, possibly a beginning cross-section, but we may not be there yet. We're still, like I said, still at the conception of it, so.
Let me suggest that commissioners with comments on this, I suspect several of us haven't given this a lot of thought, just to be aware that it's out there. If you do have comments, I would suggest you comment offline with Miranda, so that she has some idea of what you're thinking. And we will look forward to this on a future agenda item unless somebody objects to that way of handling this item.
All right, then I'll move on to the next. I only have a couple more, so I don't think you're going to need to extend the meeting. On page 80.
You're reading my mind.
On page 80, there is, Compass has opened for public comments on the, public comment has opened for the regional tip. So you're welcome to go there. There's a link in your packet if you want to make public comments. We didn't receive it in time for there to be real discussion amongst the group and for us to make a comment as the Transportation Commission, but you're welcome to go and make comments as a citizen. And let me see, I think there was one more I was going to highlight. The only other thing I was going to note is that as you're reading before the next public hearing, before the next meeting where we discussed having a public hearing, the second to last item starting on page 88, it's the last item starting on page 88 is some citizen feedback we received regarding the ATV UTV ordinance. So you may want to read through that prior to the public hearing and take that into consideration as well. And that's all I have for the staff communications.
Will you include that UTV ordinance public comment that's in this packet in the next packet as well?
I can.
Plus any additional you receive, I'm sure, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that concludes the new business items. There's a list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 future meeting topics that you've got in your in the agenda to look at. With that being said, I would recognize any commission member that has a comment.
Mr. Steed?
Yes, sir.
There was one other piece of the baton that I was asked to pass on now that I know who the new chairman is. And that is in a February city council meeting, the chairman will be asked to make the annual report. And with that, now that I have passed the baton, it's not my volunteering, but that task may fall upon you and you may be contacted by Miranda's office to give that report. And I wish you well in this next year.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. We'll look forward to that. Any other commissioner comments on any topic?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
it may be of interest to the commission that Miranda has been working with the city council, and I will be making the presentation on the alternative intersections and roundabouts that I made to our commission in December to the city council later this month on the 26th, I think I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I think on the 26th in the work session at 4 o'clock. Miranda, correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, around there, we had asked to, be more involved with the city council, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity. So I thought you may be interested in knowing.
Okay, I was very impressed with your presentation, and I'm sure they will be as well. It was very informative, even though I thought I knew a fair amount about roundabouts already. It pointed out some things I needed to remember. Other commissioner comments? Anything from staff? Okay, thank you one, thank you all. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody want to stay?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We will see you all next month. Thank you very much.